through the second chapter. We went through the first chapter. And I wanted to clarify something that I said last week, talking about Jonah. I said that sometimes our biblical characters we romanticize. And we only see the good things about them. And I use Samson as an example, obviously Jonah's an example, and we kind of gloss over a lot that's there. We use the broad strokes and go, oh, this, and this, happy ending. Well, in the Bible, sometimes there's not a happy ending. And if you don't believe that, ask the Israelites. They kept turning away from God, and they ended up in bondage. Sometimes there is not that happy ending. Now, altogether, the Bible does tell us of a happy ending. But we can even look at the terribly flawed characters, and we're all terribly flawed. But we can look at them and go, what lessons can we apply to our own life? You know, when we look through the book of Jonah, it does not end on a happy note. And I compare Jonah to the story of Peter. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. No, I don't know this man. I'm telling you, I don't know this man. Jesus who? And then the rooster crows, and he feels so horrible. Well, what happens at the end when Jesus is resurrected before he ascends into heaven? Doesn't he ask Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, I do love you. Do you love me, Peter? Yes, Lord, I do love you. Peter, do you love me? What, are we married? Do you have to keep asking the same question over and over again? Yes, of course, Lord, I love you. Then be redeemed. Be forgiven. See, that's like kind of that happy ending I'm talking about. When we get to Jonah, when you get to some of these things, when you look at Samson, was Samson's story a happy ending? No, that guy ended up, yes, fulfilling something, but he died in the process. Terribly flawed human being. I don't want to paint Jonah in a negative light, even though it is given in derogatory tones. If you actually read from verse 1, chapter 1, and go all the way to the end of chapter 4, you will notice kind of a disparaging tone against Jonah. And there's a reason for that. It's because Jonah didn't follow what God said, and he still had kind of a chip on his shoulder by the end of it when he did follow God. So, even though it's derogatory, there is positive stuff that we can take out of Jonah. So last week, talked about Jonah going, oh, you want me to go to my enemies and preach the word to them? These guys that we hate? The guys that will eventually, even though I don't know it, are going to enslave us? No, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to book to the ends of the earth. I'm going to get on a boat, hide in the bowels of the ship, sleep during a storm, which is a very strong psychological avoidance reaction. I mean, you have to be in denial to sleep through a storm. Okay? Denial is no longer in a river in Egypt. It's a character trait. And then he's tossed overboard into the ocean, and just to put the icing on the cake, the creme de la creme, the coupe de grace, a big fish comes and swallows him. All because he did what? No, Lord, not going to do it. Now, personally, one big lesson we can take from that is when God calls us, we go do it. Or, as like I titled my sermon today, you might be sleeping with the fishies. Just starting out to recap, look at Jonah 1:17. And we'll go to verse 2:1. This is after he's been tossed into the ocean. But what good did come out of it? Got to touch the lives of sailors. But at the same point, and the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the stomach of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. 2:1 says, Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the stomach of the fish. He got swallowed by a big old fish. That's how we start this. Now, this passage, people kind of wonder, was it a fish? Was it a whale? We were all taught Jonah in the whale, right? And we all got that image of Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket sitting on that little raft, right, in the middle of the whale's stomach, and you get to see the rib bones and everything like that. And there's Geppetto with, like, what's he got, a fishing line or something, and he's fishing in the water of the whale's stomach. I have that image, right? That Jonah's just sitting in there. Well, this passage coupled with the words of Jesus in Matthew 12:40, people go, well, what does this say? What does Jonah say? Oh, it says in the stomach of a fish, but Jesus says whale. Did you know that is a common way of saying there's an inaccuracy in the Bible? That's one of the things people who don't believe point to, is Jonah says fish, Jesus says whale. Well, Jesus, if he is the Son of God, obviously he doesn't know his taxonomy, does he? So there is an inconsistency. But the words of Jesus is an English translation 1,600 years after Jesus spoke these words. And they say the Bible is inaccurate. I just want to start with a little apologetics here today. Jesus, in an early English translation, said whale, while Jonah uses fish, and people go, aha, we've got it. And if that's wrong, then other things are wrong, and the entire Bible is wrong, and God doesn't exist. Evolution 1, Bible 0. That's wrong. The word whale was never used in ancient Hebrew or Greek. They didn't have a word for whale. The word whale is an Old English 1500 term and comes from Germanic, Old Norse, Swedish, and Dutch languages. So we didn't get whale until 1600 years later when Jesus says it. And on top of that, what did God say when he created all the animals? Fish of the sea. He didn't say fish, aquatic mammals, whales, seals, dolphins, jellyfish. He didn't go and say, he said creatures of the sea, fish, to each of its own kind. I made a lot, and you guys aren't going to actually come up with a classification system until Carl Linnaeus in about the 1700s. So let's put this pathetic little attempt to find inaccuracies in the Bible and with Jesus, who is God, to rest. Fish. Now, there is a lot of speculation on what kind of fish this was when you're thinking fish. Well, our mind goes to, well, what aquatic creature is big enough to swallow a human being and have them live in their stomach? Well, actually, tiger sharks. They have found body parts in tiger sharks. A whale shark is pretty enormous. I've seen some YouTube videos where the guy's like, hey, I'm underwater, and then he turns and there's this huge whale shark coming towards him. You know, and you never see it. They cut it right there, so I don't know what happened to the poor guy. I hope he's all right. But a whale, right? A whale's got to be big enough. A blue whale, you know, is huge. It's the biggest one that's out there. Of course that could swallow a human being. But what kind of fish? Because like I say, the Hebrew and the Greek word actually mean fish or sea creature, or get this, sea monster. It is referred to as a kind of fish, much like Genesis refers to animals breeding according to their kind, i.e. dog kind, cat kind, monkey kind, fish kind. They breed to their own kind, so fish is a general term. Actually, what's kind of interesting, I said sea monster. If you go to Job 41, it describes a sea monster called Leviathan. This is a massive sea creature. Just to give you an idea, Job 41 says, can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook, so obviously a sea creature, or tie down its tongue with a rope? Can you put a cord through its nose or pierce its jaw with a hook? A club seems to it but a piece of straw. It laughs at the rattling of the lance. Its undersides are jagged potsherds, leaving a trail in the mud like a threshing sledge. It makes the depths churn like a boiling cauldron and stirs up the sea like a pot of ointment. It leaves a glistening wake behind it. One would think the deep had white hair. Psalms 41 says this is a real creation of God. In Psalms 41, a search for that. There the ships go to and fro, and Leviathan which you formed to frolic there. So this is a creature. that God created. Now, we simply don't know what this fish was. I just point out Leviathan because it's a huge sea monster. Yar, they be monsters there. And there was one. There's also one called Behemoth. It's a land monster. And some people theorize that's what they probably called dinosaurs, was Behemoth. And it's described like one too. This could easily be an aquatic dinosaur. We just don't know what kind of fish it was. We also don't know if this particular fish, and I know I'm doing a lot of setup here, this is good information to know. Because what fish could possibly do this? Because we got to think in terms of realism here, right? What kind of fish was this? When was it created? Was it created in the beginning in Genesis 1 when God said, I have created all the sea creatures? And Leviathan was right there. Well, obviously, what Psalms tells us, yeah, it was created. It went to and fro, and it frolicked in the same oceans that the boats were in. And let's face it, that ocean is deep. Sometimes, well, I heard somebody say we know more about the dark side of the moon than our own ocean depths. Just the stuff that God created down there. And there are some ugly creations. So beauty is obviously in the eye of the beholder of God. Because I have seen some ugly fish at the bottom of the ocean. Stuff of nightmares. We simply just do not know. And God, when you read Genesis 1, it says he rested, right? He rested from the work he had done in 6 days. Does it say he stopped creating? Did it say, I will create no more? Could he have created this fish? It does say, appointed. And the Lord appointed a great fish. Well, was this one he already created? Or did he create, again, a specific fish? Because we don't see this kind of a fish anywhere, do we? Not in our natural world today. It could have easily died off. It could have been a one-off for God. He just created that fish at that moment for Jonah and said, oh, Jonah, did you screw up? I even created something special for you. That's how bad you messed up. Poor little guy. He's only going to be around for a couple of hundred years, and then he's going to disappear. Again, we just don't know. Whatever this creature was, a fish, a whale, a fish-like creature, maybe now extinct, it was a creation of God for a specific person in the narrative of Jonah. Another thing to look at is that Jonah was in the belly of that fish for 3 days. And this, like I say, we may not get all the way through chapter 2 today, but I really want to hammer this home. Jonah was in the whale's belly. And it says that, doesn't it? He was in the stomach of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Now, how possible is that? It's not. I can't even keep food in my stomach for 3 days. How can this fish keep a human being in its stomach for 3 days and Jonah be alive? It is absolutely 100% impossible. Now, I did a little investigation on this because I did hear a story and I went through and I did research. According to investigations, there is not a credible story about anybody being swallowed by a whale or a fish and coming out alive. 0. Now, there was an old myth about a guy named James Bartley, a 19th century whaler, who was swallowed by a fish, or by a whale. They found the whale, captured him within like a day or so, or within that day, good, reasonable period, and they cut open the whale's body and pulled Bartley out of it. And of course, he was white from the stomach acid and stuff like that, but he was alive. I did some research. It's actually a fake story. His wife even confirmed. He made that up. That's a whale in a tail. I wonder if that's where we get that term. His wife called him out on it. There isn't a credible story, and this isn't Sharknado. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that. Just a beautiful series of movies right there. Sharknado. This isn't Sharknado where you get swallowed by something, the guy comes along with a chainsaw, pulls open the shark, and pulls the bodies out so that you have a happy ending at the end of the movie. No! Yeah, and if you think that's, just go watch it. They're beautiful masterpieces of cinema. This isn't Pinocchio. This isn't being swallowed and living on a raft. You're in the whale For 3 days. Now, is it possible to be swallowed by a large aquatic creature like a whale? Yes, theoretically, it is possible. You can be out whale watching, oh, that's a beautiful gulp. Yes, it is possible. Is it possible for you to survive? No, it's not. Think about that. There is no oxygen. That's kind of important. The rule of 3 starts with oxygen. 3 minutes without air, you're gone. Then think about the pressure that, of swallowing. You can't even get an M&M down sometimes. And your throat is like, you're getting crushed as you're going through the tract of this animal. Then you've got the pressures of the water outside. Then you've got all that digestive stuff in that stomach. They have a mighty digestive system. You spend a couple hours in there, and they're picking you up with a squeegee. There is no way somebody could be in this body, this whale, for 3 days. It is absolutely impossible. You get swallowed by a giant fish, you are dead. And think about it, sharks take bites out of you too, so you've got the whole bleeding thing going on. Well, if that's not possible, then that must make Jonah fake, right? It's absolutely impossible, and I'm here to tell you it is. So that must mean Jonah is just a morality tale, allegory, some sort of symbolism. It's not to be taken literally, and don't we hear that so often? The Bible doesn't be. You can't live in a whale. That's impossible. Naturally, you can't. You're right. But if Jonah's not real, then the entire Bible's not real. One inconsistency taints the testimony of everything. But I got news for you. It is real. Jonah was swallowed. He was swallowed by a giant fish. He was in that belly for 3 days and 3 nights. And there was no way he could have survived without help. So how did he survive? Supernaturally. Ooh. We don't like that word, do we? Because if we can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't smell it, we can't taste it, we can't observe it, then apparently it can't happen. Man has gone through and classified all of nature, and our science that we have created tells us everything. It has to be natural. And that's one reason people don't like to take anything literally in the Bible, because it's supernatural. But I got this revelation for everybody. We like to believe in God, right? Some people do. And Christians also don't take this Bible literally. But Christians love to believe in a God that can save them from their sins, create an eternal heaven, but yet for some reason can't keep some guy alive. We can believe in that supernatural stuff because that's a happy ending for me. But I can't take anything else literally because God doesn't have that power. God can do anything. From the words of his mouth, he created that fish. He created this universe. He created everything to function a specific way. And because he is the author and the authority of his creation, he can bend the rules if he wants. He can do things supernaturally. Didn't he cause the sun to stand still for 24 hours? Didn't he cause a global flood, which is absolutely impossible? However, we believe it was possible on Mars, just not on Earth. Yeah, go look that one up. That'll leave you scratching your head. He has done supernatural things. So why can't we believe, after all he's done, he can't keep somebody alive for 3 days and 3 nights inside the belly of a fish? Supernatural. There are things in this world that we cannot understand, that science has not explained yet. But you know what we do with those questionable things, those things we can't explain? The biologists pass it off to botanists. Botanists go, but that's not my problem. I'm going to pass it off to the physicists. The physicists go, that's not my department. I pass it off to the chemists. The chemists pass it off to the astrophysicists, to the quantum physicists. It's somebody else's problem. I don't have to worry about explaining it because that's not my department. And it just goes in a big loop called circular logic. where we can just easily go, this is true. God's powerful and he's supernatural. He can do it. He can do things that we cannot explain. We know that Jonah and the fish is reliably true because Jesus even attests to it. If you look at Matthew 12:40 through 41, it says, "For just as Jonah was in the stomach of the sea monster," fish, whale, "for 3 days and 3 nights, so will the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. The men of Nineveh will stand up with this generation at judgment and will condemn it because they repented at the preaching of Jonah. And behold, something greater than Jonah is here." Now, if Christ knew that Jonah was fake, why would he, because that 3 days and 3 nights he's talking about is what? His death and resurrection. Jesus died. And 3 days later, he was risen from the dead. Now, if Jesus knew Jonah's story was fake, and it's not possible, it couldn't have happened, then why would he liken his own death to a fictional story about a man and a whale? Must mean because Jesus' story is fictional too, right? No, Jesus' death and resurrection was as real as Jonah's 3 days and 3 nights within that whale. If that's fake, then Jesus' resurrection is fake. And if that is, then there's no reason for us to be here today. We just go home, forget about the Bible, go ahead and close it. Because there's nothing supernatural in any religion or any belief out there. And we go ahead and we believe in a natural world that we actually come up with the rules for. And we take God out of everything. You can't have your cake and eat it too, which I don't get that phrase. Because if you can't have your cake, why can't you eat it? But you can't say, I believe God did this, but he didn't do this. God is supernatural. So how did Jonah survive? Now, I'll kind of go through this as quick as I can. Let's compare the words of Christ to Jonah. And look at that. If you look at Jonah 2:2, this is why he's in the belly of the whale and the fish. And he said, "I called out of my distress to the Lord, and he answered me. For I cried for help from the depth of Sheol," or the realm of the dead, "and you heard my voice." What is he saying? I called out from where? Sheol, the realm of the dead. What did that just tell us? Jonah wasn't alive. Jonah was dead. Jonah died after he was tossed over the ship. And you can read through all of Jonah here. What does verse 2 or 3 say? "For you had cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the current engulfed me. All your breakers and billows passed over me." Verse 4 says, "So I said, I have been expelled from your sight. Nevertheless, I will look again towards your holy temple. Water encompassed me to the point of death. The great deep engulfed me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I descended to the roots of the mountains. The earth with its bars was around me forever." That does not sound like a guy who's going to live. These are the parting words of a man drowning to death. Now, he is saying this in the belly of the whale to God. So he is recounting what happened. It's graphic. "Into the heart of sea, the current engulfed me, your breakers passed over me. Water encompassed me to the point of death. Seaweed wrapped around my head." He's dying. He's dead. And then the great fish that God appointed for that moment came up and swallowed him. Now, why? So his body's not at the bottom of the ocean, because what happens? The whale spits him out. So the fish swoops him up and starts going towards shore. It takes him 3 days. I don't know. They didn't have Google Maps back then. All right? It took them a while to get to the shore. But that fish kept him in that belly. Well, then if he's dead, how can he be praying to God? Now, this question has come up in our Bible study a couple of times. There's a place called Hades in the Bible. Sheol, Hades, realm of the dead. Now, what is Hades? Think of it as the DMV waiting room of the afterlife. All right? Before Jesus Christ came and died on the cross, when we died, we went to Hades. This compartment, the spiritual compartment where our soul went to. And you actually had a good place and a bad place in Hades. One was called Abraham's bosom. And that's where the people of faith in God went to be comforted by the saints of the past, the faithful of the past. And they were just kind of sitting there waiting for Christ, or for God to welcome them into the afterlife. And that wasn't going to happen until Jesus on the cross. And when he died, he went to Hades and he opened up the gates for the faithful and he brought them into heaven. Ephesians 4, 9 through 10 says he also had descended into the lower parts of the earth. He who descended is himself also he who ascended far above all the heavens, so that he might fill all things. 1 Peter 4, 6 says, for the gospel has for this purpose been preached, even those who are dead, that though they are judged in the flesh as people, they may live in the spirit according to the will of God. The people who died before Christ went to Hades. That's where their soul was. And you had the faithful and the unfaithful. Jesus came in, he goes, you ain't going to be staying here anymore. This is a dump. I've got mansions in heaven for you. You know, they're wonderful, brand new, built. The mortgage is paid off. Please come on up. And he took the faithful. But then you had the unfaithful going, what about me? I don't know you. Clang. And that's where they remain until judgment. That's when they're called up from the dead to face the great white throne judgment. So, if you are an unbeliever, you go to Hades and you wait there. If you are a believer and faithful in Christ, the minute you die, you open up your eyes and you're in heaven in glory with Jesus Christ. All that being said, where was Jonah? His body was in the belly of the fish. His soul was in the realm of the dead. He was dead. Now, I can only go by the text to assume that. There are some theories that what God did was he put a protective, bubble around Jonah, to where he had oxygen so he wouldn't suffocate, and then he was put in a comatose state for 3 days and 3 nights until the fish spit him out. Now, is that entirely possible? Yes, that's supernatural. I'm not saying that couldn't be possible. But all I've got is the text right here. And the text itself, I called out from the depths of the realm of the dead, the depths of Sheol. I was dead, and I called out. Because remember the story of the rich man and Lazarus when Jesus is talking about Hades? And the rich man is calling out, well, why can't I go to... They're calling out. So Jonah can be calling out from the depths of Hades, from the depths of the realm of the dead. All this sounds like the words of a dying man, relating his experience. I was drowning. I was being pulled in. I went to, what does it say? The roots of the mountains? Where do the roots of the mountains begin? In the ocean. In the depths. Mount Everest is 700 miles above sea level. I don't know the exact. But where does the root of Everest start? If you keep going, it goes out into the plains, and then it goes out into a little delta, and then that delta goes to a continental shelf, and the continental shelf starts going down into the ocean until you're all the way down into the ocean. He was drowned. He died. So it seems to me, from the text, that Jonah was dead. His spirit waited in the realm of the dead, as his body waited in the fish for 3 days. Now, last week I talked about looking at words. Down, 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 down. Jonah 1, he went down. And then he went down, and he went into the depths of the ship. He's going down. He's trying to run away from God. And when we run away from God, we keep going down. And guess what? When you get to a point where you run away from God and you deny his will and purposes and going, I know more than you. I will do what I want. We go so far down that we start to drown in our own sin. And then we die to sin. Down, 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 down. From the depths, I went down to the roots, the bottom of the mountains. He's sinking. As we turn from God and run from him, we notice that our life is on a downward slide. We are being pulled down by our sin, by our desires, because we don't want to follow God. And before you know it, that sin wraps around our head like seaweed and chokes us off. And we die in sin. We go so far down, there's no way we can get back up. But verse 6 says, but you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. We've gone down as far as we can in this story, haven't we? You can't get any lower than the bottom of the ocean, swallowed by a fish. That's as far as you can go. And you can't get out of it, can you? It's impossible. Yep, now you start to see it turn. He cries out to God. Yep, let me do a quick translation here for you. Yep, Lord, I messed up. I'm an idiot. I thought I knew more than you. I am acknowledging that I was wrong. And I messed up. I'm ready to turn back towards you. Now see, Jonah was in an unusual place. He was given a second chance. How many of us are given a second chance when we die? We don't. But this also illustrates that no matter how far down you go, we can still call out to God, and he raises us up. You can't do it yourself. It's impossible. Waves are crashing over you. Your clothes are just weighted down with seawater. You're struggling. You're running out of air. And then all of a sudden, yep, that's it. It's over. And we scream out, or try to. But even God hears our heart and our mind. And he goes, yeah, you can't do anything, can you? And that guy's got a big old appetite. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick you up. And now we see a turn in the story. Up, 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 up. Resurrection. You look at verse 9. Well, let's look at verse 8, 9, and 10. We'll end there. Those who regard vain idols forsake their faithfulness. Or those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. But I will sacrifice to you with a voice of thanksgiving. That which I have vowed I will pay. Salvation is from the Lord. Ding. Giving out names. He realized, my worthless idol. What was Jonah's worthless idol? It's the biggest idol that we all have. You're thinking, well, I don't go worship some androgynous tree spirit and have like a carving or something. How about this as an idol? Our own desires. Our own will. Our own purpose. It's called pride, ego, arrogance. Pick a synonym. Us. We are our biggest idol. Yes, we might not go to the mirror and go, hey, I worship you. No, but we worship us, our own intelligence, our own intellect. It's not intelligence, it's thin intelligence. We are not that bright as a species. We haven't got it figured out. We've had thousands and thousands of years on this planet, and look where it's gotten us. A collective goose egg. Zero, nada, Nothing. That's what Jonah did. His pride, his arrogance, his ego. My desires, not yours. You have a plan. You have a design. You have a purpose. You're God. You're a creator. You know all. But I am going to go away from you as far as I can and escape. And then when we start to drown, we start to realize, yep, this is my fault. And this is why I don't go in the ocean, because of Jonah. I've seen too many movies and read this particular book of the Bible. I stay out of it. Yes, I was that crazy guy that decided I'm going to be brave and go in the ocean, and something grabbed onto my leg, and I came screaming out of the water, and it was seaweed, and all I thought was Jonah. You better believe, 4 feet of water, I was praying to God. But what I sacrifice, I will sacrifice to you. What I vow, I will keep. Lord, I realize I was wrong. Because now I know I'm in the belly of the whale. I'm sitting in the DMV waiting room of the afterlife. Salvation is definitely of the Lord and not of me. Because this is where it got me. Salvation is from the Lord. And then verse 10. Then the Lord commanded the fish. I love the word. And it vomited Jonah up onto dry land. Not just dropped him off. Next stop. No. Blech. Man, that's like a humble resurrection, isn't it? That is the most humblest way. Yeah, okay, I deserved every bit of this. That's on me. But he resurrected him. Now, when I say compare Jonah to Jesus Christ and the death in the 3 days, you see the similarities that are there, don't you? 3 days, 3 nights, 3 days, 3 nights. The bowels of the fish, the bowels of the earth. Dead. We will be dead for 3 days. So what are you saying? Jonah was a precursor to Christ? No. Because how was Jonah resurrected? Outside of the whole regurgitation thing, how was he resurrected? Was it through his own power? Was it through the fish having a tummy ache? No, it was God. You were dead. And now you are alive by my power. Now, who is Jesus? He's God. He's the author of life. His command over it. The difference is that Jesus resurrected himself. That's something we can take from this. We can't do anything, and we can't save ourselves. So who's the only one that can? A man who did die, but who was also God, and through his own authority over life and death, rose himself, but not only did that, kicked in the gates of Hades and freed the faithful so that they can live forever. We can't do it. All we can do is drag ourselves down into oblivion. But no matter how deep we go, and I will end with this, no matter how deep we go, we can still cry out to God. I see people in hospice. And I see people that are comatose. That is about as deep as you can get into a sickness, into an illness, where you cannot communicate. And we are trapped in the bowels of our own body because the brain still functions. We are still there. And yet we can still cry out to God in our heart and our mind, and he will hear us, and he will go, yes, I will pull you out of this, and I will resurrect you into glory. There is no depths, whether physically, mentally, spiritually, that we can go that God will not pull us out, but he is the only one that can. He's the only one who has the power to resurrect himself, and by that, he has resurrected us. So your take home today, stay out of the ocean. Don't run away from God to the ocean. But if we turn away from God, we start to notice that downhill slide that we're going, and all of a sudden we're in the water, and we're starting to go down. might be a good time to start crying out to God and realizing, we caused this. I'm the one that jumped overboard. I'm the one that was tossed. It's my fault. I'm accountable. This is my responsibility. And start calling out while your head's kind of like a bobber and not while you're, about a mile under. And you see jaws coming for you. But even if you do get swallowed by those jaws of snow, there's still hope. You cannot go deep enough for God not to hear you. When we cry out, repent, and change, and you are not cutting your way out of it, you're not swimming up from those depths. You have to go, take me. And he will resurrect you from any depth that you find yourself in.